What actually drew you into comics? What got you into that? Was it like a childhood love or something that you picked up a little bit later into adulthood?
Well, I've always loved comics and superheroes and stuff like that since I was like a kid. Probably got into like Batman and things before I got into the actual comics, like through like the films and like like the cartoons and all that. Then like I could discover this whole other medium where like it was existed in, and that kind of became the gateway drug to kind of get into comics big time when I was a little kid. And then I kind of like drifted away for a couple of years, then kind of got back into it when I was a teenager, like hardcore. So I've always loved comics as a reader, and I've always wanted to like, be a writer in some form. But for some reason, it never really clicked like right for comics, like
Uh-huh.
until like relatively late. I'd actually had graduated from university, and I was supposed to be my idea was I wanted to be a screenwriter, like, and I'd done like a screenwriting course, and I'd put together a budget for a short film, and that kind of fell through. So I was kind of a bit of a loose end. I was like, what am I going to do? And a friend of mine who was an artist, like said, could you write a comic script for me to draw? So I was like, okay, I can give it a try. And like, I think his art style was this kind of like abstract, kind of gritty, charcoal style. I think he wanted a kind of like psychological thriller type thing. But I went and wrote like a superhero comic,
Uh-huh.
and he was like, I can't draw this. But the process of like doing the writing, and like I kind of fell in love with the whole process of like comic writing. I love like the limitations and the structure of it, and the way it's kind of like you're working within this kind of specific field, and you have to be economic with your pacing and your characterization and like your dialogue and things. I kind of like the challenge of that, and also like that it's a relatively young medium, so it kind of feels like there's still scope to push the boundaries and do things that like if they've not been done before, at least it's uncommon, so you can kind of be a bit of a trailblazer. And I think it's just like it's really great. And my limited experience in doing film, like you quickly find out there's so much about film is like you start off with a vision and how do I chip away at that vision to make it so it's something that's practical that you can do. But
Mhm.
with comics, like there's no like limitation like in what can be done that others outside of like an imagination, like and the ability of the artist to convey that imagination. But so yeah, so that's like kind of how I get into comics, and I started with the standard, like my superhero script I did with my friend, ended up refining that and putting it out through Comics Tribe. I think we started working on that in 2010. It got well to release in 2013, and the rest was history from there.
We'll just dive right into and then Emily was gone. So I was reading this, and I can't think of another comic that I've ever read that gave me like such anxiety as I was going through this. And I'm a big horror fan. I read a lot of horror comics, and I think this is on a tier all its own. I can't think of anything that I can even compare to it. So,
But thank you very much. That's really nice of you to say. That means it does our job. So I think
oh
that's a compliment.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would praise this book all day long. It's one of those that I think it definitely could have gone unnoticed, but it was so impactful on the people that read it. It was just shared, and the word of mouth really brought it into the public eye.
Where me and Ian like we got together and said like what do we both love, and we'll just throw in this big pot of stuff that we both really like, and we'll see what comes out the other end. So like David Lynch got mentioned, and we also mentioned like the Killing and like chilly Nordic dramas and stuff. Like what would we do if we took that and kind of gave it a remix of like an Ian Laurie and John Lee's touch. And like we had The Wicker Man, like you say. There's not sure, a British comedy. That's what passes as comedy in Britain. It's called The League of Gentlemen, and it's called a comedy that has a laugh track, but it's genuinely one of the most terrifying shows like I've ever seen in my life.
Really?
And that was like a big influence like that. And there was like Ben Wheatley films like Kill List and things that
Oh,
were
love
definitely
that one.
it's like a big kind of like touchstone as well. Like that movie, just that whole idea of like taking something that's kind of gritty and grimy and like grounded and slowly kind of revealing that there's like something much bigger going on. That was definitely a kind of influence in that, and also stuff like M.R. James and Stephen King and a bit of Lovecraft and things like
Mhm.
or old Hammer horror. I definitely think that all kind of was all in the mixing pot and things. So it was basically they took all these different influences and all these things that we were all interested in. Or another one I should point out was I'm not sure if you've seen this one. One of my favourite John Carpenter movies, one of his most underrated, In the Mouth of Madness.
Absolutely. Yep.
It was like a big influence, and I remember, like I said to Ian, like now this might be an obscure one for you, but this is something that's big in my mind. I think it's going to be a big part of it. And he's like, and I said, In the Mouth of Madness, and he went, oh my god, I was thinking the same thing. And I've been using that as an influence from the start. So like, that was like a big touchstone as well.
Oh yeah, Sutter Kane, I think, is that the Lovecraft analogy in that? Yep.
And even though I hadn't seen the movie in over a decade, when I started like, writing Emily Was Gone, I still had that image in my head of like, like the kid in the bike down the road, then he goes past the kid again and they're right old and turn that. It's just like stuff like that which just made me like, and I'm getting like goosebumps even on my shoulder when I was saying it. So that was definitely an influence in there as well. So we kind of throw that stuff in the melting pot and mix it all together, and Emily Was Gone came out in the other end.
Well, that's awesome. It's kind of like the slaughterhouse there, where it's just producing something.
Yeah, and also one of the biggest influences for me, I should say, is just the work of Ian Laurie in general. Because, like I say, I was a huge fan of Ian for years before we did Emily Was Gone. So I basically just wanted to write a book which was Ian Laurie's greatest hits. And I just wrote the kind of stuff that I knew he'd be awesome at drawing. Like, I was going to try and set it up specifically and tailor it to him and the kind of themes that he likes to explore in his work. So I wanted to just give him that, but in a bigger platform. Like me and Ian both joke that like it's by far Ian's most mainstream like work, and also by far my most out there like non-mainstream work. We kind of meet somewhere in the middle. But yeah.
Well, yeah, that's great, because I was wondering actually if you wrote this for Ian or if you had a previous working relationship before this book, because I mean you can definitely tell from the way the art is, it seems like just tailor-made for this artist here.
Like, this book wouldn't have existed without Ian Laurie. This was something where we both came at it from the very beginning. It was like, this is something where we started with, let's do a project together and built it up together from the ground up. So very much as like me and Ian's baby together. Well,
awesome. I mean, the whole time I was picturing this in like a film, like if they somehow adapted this, and part of me is like, but I don't know if they could do it. It'd almost have to be animated. Like, you could play it off as like a straight story, but then that loses such a big chunk of what makes it unique.
Yeah, like just that kind of like itchy kind of like. I just think the thing about Ian's work is that even like the regular characters look kind of monstrous, so there's this kind of like constant sense of like unease and that kind of like hyper emotionality with the beads of sweat down the head and things like that, and that was definitely something I knew Ian could bring to it, so I definitely think like, I mean, I'd love to see a movie of it, like if only if it would get what people would like get the book, but yeah, I know what you mean in terms of like it'd be hard to imagine it without the characters like drawn in that Ian Laurie style.
Oh yeah. Even the normal characters, like you said, you're just uneasy about them. You're like, so are they that monstrous looking, really, or is that just the tone? But no,
you don't realise there's an awful lot of ugly people in Scotland, so
so it's just an accurate portrayal.
Just on the bus,
Well, cool. One of the other aspects I wanted to talk to you about was the use of like folklore. So the monster in this, is this a real creature in Scotland, or is this something that you completely dreamed up?
No, we made it up.
Okay, all right. Well, I knew it wasn't a real thing, but
it's kind of like 50-50, because we made up the character of Bonnie Shaw, but Orkney does have this kind of rich folklore of like trowes and changeling and various like child snatching stories and things. I think it was obviously like to explain like I think it's like, this is like the ugly side of it, but like the centuries ago when like children were born like with disabilities and things, I think it was generally explained like like the trowes took away your child and replaced them with this like defective child and stuff, like and that's where that kind of came from, I think. And so there is all these kind of stories about like doppelgangers and changelings and like fairies that take away your children away. But it was all kind of like just split up on lots of different stories and things. So we kind of invented this kind of focal figure of like Bonnie Shaw, which kind of took all those elements and gave it its own additional twist. And also it was based on an earlier Ian Laurie character, which he created in one of his short stories called Cheffenhouse. And Cheffenhouse was like, originally it was this story he told that was like set like up in this like Norwegian village, and Cheffenhouse just was this like it was a similar story where he kind of showed up at the doorstep of this like couple with a baby, and like and he didn't look like Bonnie Shaw had a different design. It looked like, the British children's TV character, Mr. Blobby. But like he kind of shows up like, the TV. In the house, and they kind of like pulls up his like big sagging breast and pulls big wads of cash, and it's like, give me your child, like, and then they take the big sweaty dripping bills, and they're like, okay, and they give their child away, and he kind of walks off up in the mountains with them. And I always thought it was a very chilling story. I thought, why don't we do our own version of that? And originally I proposed to Ian, why don't we just use Shepherdhouse and kind of make it part of like a shared universe? And Ian was like, no, I want to make this something distinct, so he kind of made up a new version of the character, Bonnie Shaw. But the funny thing is that even though it's a made-up character, I mean, I don't say that it's a made-up character when I'm pitching the book at shows. So I'll say when I'm pitching the book, and the heart at the heart of the mystery is Bonnie Shaw, this creature from old Orkney folklore. The story of Bonnie Shaw is he would visit parents in times of need and give them the solution to their problems in exchange for their child. So I'll tell that story and everyone goes, ooh, like in America, especially in America, people go, oh my god, there's this exotic Scottish folklore, that sounds really interesting. But one time I was at New York Comic Con actually, and I was pitching the story, and a Scottish voice goes, yeah, I've heard all about Bonnie Shaw, my parents told me all about it when I was a kid, and I was like,
liar.
No, but the thing is, multiple people have said, "Oh yeah, I remember Bonnie Shaw. I had nightmares about him." Some wonder if we've actually invoked him and made him real.
It's like a Freddy Krueger new nightmare type of scenario. Well, cool. I didn't know if it was like a kind of like a Loch Ness monster folklore that everyone accepted, or if it was something that you just dreamed up. And from the afterwards in the book, you kind of mentioned that nightmare you had about it, and yeah, I think it's something. I think everyone could probably relate to something like that too, where you have this fully fleshed out nightmare that just seems so real that it almost writes itself from that point on.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was the nightmare I had when I was a little kid actually, and it's not the first time I've used a nightmare like in a story. I think like me and Ian did a short comic called Quilt, and the starting point of that was like an actual nightmare I'd had too. So sometimes you get good ideas out of them,
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know this is the type of book that the more you explain it, you kind of ruin the mystique on there. But for any of the readers who are wondering, like myself, like, what is going on at that slaughterhouse or the assassination agency that gives the hit list, essentially, or the things that are removed from their necks, do you have any clues or insight on that, or is it purely what the reader can take from it and make their own?
Yeah, I know, like, to be honest, like, originally we needed plotted out a longer series, and I was eventually going to, like, get into all these things and explain them all. This is what this is all about, and this is what that's all about. But then in the process of cutting the series down, rather than, like, compressing the story, we just cut out all those later chapters and ended at the point where issue 5 was going to end. I thought, like, maybe that's what that should be done. I think it's a lot of this stuff is best left unexplained. I think it would be cheaper for me to say, well, this is what's going on here. I think it's better if you kind of have your own idea about what it is. And I think I take a cue from Ben Wheatley, who directed Kill List, and someone asked him what's the number one rule for effective horror, and his answer was explain as little as possible. So I'm going to take a cue from that and let you throw in mind the decision about what it is.
No, I admire that response, because I'm the same way. I'm someone that, like, I want more of it, but I feel like once I hear it, I'm like, well, that's not as good as I am thinking, is what I've made up in my head.
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely the best if you can kind of come up with your own version of it. And whatever you come up with is true.
That's what it is. Yep. How did you know? Well, awesome. Do you have any future projects coming up on the horizon that we can be on the lookout for?
Yeah. I'm not sure when this podcast is going to be going out, but don't know the exact day yet, but I think maybe early to mid-September, my new comic, Sync, launches in direct market. It's going to be a monthly series, another 5-issue miniseries.
Great.
Coming out through Comics Tribe again, who put out Emily Was Gone. But this one's got Alex Cormack on art. Alex Cormack, who I did Oxymoron Love Waste Nightmare with. Sync is, we're back in Scotland for Sync, but it's a series of standalone tales where each issue is like a one-shot, but they're all in the shared location of Sink Hill, which is a forgotten district and a kind of nightmare funhouse mirror vision of Glasgow. And we've got, so like the first chapter involves this character Alan, who's a kind of like, young suburbanite who's been out partying with his friends in the city centre, and he misses the last bus home, and he has to walk home alone through the bad part of town, which is like something probably a lot of people can relate to. But his journey home takes him a wrong turn into Sink Hill, where he has to kind of face like an onslaught of like knife wielding gangs of youths, a fox-masked vigilante called Mr. Dig. And we also use we go back to old folklore again. This one actually is a true one, unlike Bonnie Shaw. This is something that actually was told as a kid. It's not folklore, it's an urban legend that was based around Glasgow about a blue van which supposedly drove around the streets at night, and the blue van was filled with clowns who snatched kids. And so we kind of like that's what's always haunted me ever since I was a little kid. And this was a proper story. This properly caused hysteria amongst like kids, like, you know, where they had to send the local police to our school to say, like, you know, there's no such thing as clowns and blue vans, like, you know, don't panic if you see a blue van outside. And all the kids were like, that's the police would say, isn't it? So that's like, you know, we kind of weave that in. They're the kind of like ghouls which haunt the periphery of all the stories and kind of link the various chapters together. So it's a kind of like pulp noir kind of Sin City type vibe, but with a kind of like creepy horror tinged undertones. So if you liked Then We Was Gone, this is going to be somewhat a similar tradition of kind of weird and scary, so you might want to check it out. It's called Sink, and it launches in September.
Last question. So you're from Scotland. Have you had a chance to run into Grant Morrison ever in your comic lifetime?
Yeah, but one of the first signings I ever went to was Grant Morrison, and like, if you've ever been to a Grant Morrison signing, the queues are legendarily long and take ages to get through because he'll spend a good like 5 minutes chatting to every single individual person, you know, that goes there. So like, and I went to see one of his talks when he did his talk about being like abducted by aliens in Kathmandu. And, you know, and hearing Grant Morrison talk about being abducted by aliens in Kathmandu is like going like to hear like the Beatles play their hits or something. You want to hear that story. And like, then at one point I also went to see Neil Gaiman at a show in Edinburgh. He was doing like a live reading of like some of his work and things. It was a great show, and the reason I got to see it, I got a free ticket for it, because my friend's mum is a stand-up comedian and knows Neil Gaiman but has never read one of his books. Basically, she just thinks he's the nice Englishman that like goes to like Fringe every so often. So she like gave her a couple of passes to his show. So I got to go backstage, and like, and you know, my friend's mum was like, and this is John, like, and Neil's like, you know, oh, I hear you write comics, John, so you might know Grant Morrison. And then like I turned to Grant Morrison stand and like, I was like, I know. But,
man.
But like, so yeah, but I've met him a few times and things, and also like Frank Quietly, like, you know, lives like like 15 minutes away from me, like, and he shops at the same supermarket like as me. So I know, like, so like it's not like, you know, like, I'm not saying Scotland's small, like, you know, but they're like, you know, bump into people quite often. But yeah.
Oh, awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, the amount of great comic creators coming out of your neck of the woods there is just phenomenal.
Yeah, no, it's annoying that I can't even say, not only am I nowhere near like the top 10 best like Scottish like comics people, I can't even say like I'm the best Scottish person from the borough of Rutherglen outside of Glasgow, because there are people there.